topic today. I was gifted with this wonderful book from, this is Unity of Colorado, is it? Yes, Unity of Colorado. Canty was there, and that's where he went to church for many years before he came back to Bermuda. And it was written by Arnie Carvel, and he got him to sign it for me, Eugenia. And I'm truly blessed. Last week, Rotimi talked about grace and gratitude. And the 21-day meditation that Deepak and Oprah have set up is on manifesting grace leading to gratitude. And as I was thinking on it this week, as something always comes through me to the week to speak on, I saw this book sitting on my desk, and it said attitude. And what is grace and gratitude without a shift in attitude? And so I've had this quote for a while, and every week I put up on our page on Facebook a different quote. And this is one I put up, and I get a lot of comments on it. It says, positive thoughts generate positive feelings and attract positive life experiences. Isn't that true? When we go around with a smile on our face and grace in our heart and gratitude for all that is, wonderful things keep coming, and we don't even have to work real hard. We just have to change our perspective. Gratitude and its power affects our lives in so many ways. It's a powerful part of our lives. Attitude with grace and gratitude. It's the beginning, as Arnie says, to begin to understand its vastness and its implications. We must discover, and he talks about quantum physics, which I'll go into in a minute. And we've heard a bit about quantum physics. And I look for a slide presentation on attitude, and this is what I got. Isn't that great? Now look at all those different faces. Yeah. And I said I need a nice free template on attitude. I saw these faces, I like, perfect. And we're talking, attitude is not about what you see. Do you see some days some people's faces are like this? And then when you talk to them, they go, oh, hi, how you doing? They just need you to reach into them and bring out that grace and that gratitude. And then there's others with smile and somebody giving you a wink and all the different states of facial. But a lot of times you find that attitude that's what's coming from within you. It's not actually on the physical. Because sometimes you say, it falls, isn't it? Now it's not for us to judge. But sometimes we see this big smile, but you feel a different energy. And so we're talking about that attitude that comes from within today. Most of this book is of different quotes that I'm going to put out from different, like Winston Churchill and Maxwell Stone. And the story is based around quotes that he found throughout life. You know, you go on the internet, it's quotes upon quotes upon quotes. And he pulled out different ones. This is his 7th book. And in it, he tied in a story. He has a good friend named Max. And Max is one of those wise type people, almost like he's walking Jesus with him. And has a story that ties to every instance in life. And so each quote, he gives a little story about something that helps you to understand that quote even more. And it's done in like a conversation type of attitude, a conversation flow, I should say. Well, what is attitude? Before I say what the revealing word about attitude, what is attitude to you? Anybody want to say something briefly? But what is attitude?
Expressing the true self or not expressing the true self.
Okay. Anybody else?
State of mind.
Okay. State of mind.
Altitude.
Altitude. So explain that a little bit more. I know about altitude, but see, talking about interpretation, I can say, oh, it's talking about top of a mountain. Altitude. So explain altitude for me.
Well, your attitude will determine your altitude, how high.
Exactly. I knew what he was talking about. I wanted everybody else to understand what you were talking about. Thank you for sharing that, because it is. What you're thinking up here, it says how high your consciousness is and how big that smile would be. So in the revealing word, it says attitude is that state of mind, as most of you have said, in relation to matters or circumstances. What's going on in your life? How much baggage are you carrying or not carrying? It has that mindset that's attached to what's going on in your life. So you get up in the morning, you're like, oh boy, another So what does that day look like? Oh boy, another day. And every day you get to work and your boss is yelling, or you get to work and, oh, I left my lunch home, and all of these things because your first thing in your morning was that face right there like, oh, it's another day. And you got it. Right, clear, God answered. If you want to say, you got what you put out there. So this 21-day meditation period that I think grace and gratitude ties right into this attitude, which is very important. The first day started on Monday. And we're talking about attitude and states of mind. And the first day of manifesting grace through attitude, first day says it's a path to grace that begins today. When we're in that state of grace, in that state of opening and allowing God into our lives, into our thoughts, and into our consciousness, we begin a new day. We shift from, oh, another day to, oh, right, I'm up, I'm alive, I can see, I can hear. And we say thank you for all those little things. The second day they use gratitude is with you. You have a choice, always, about gratitude. Next day was awaken the energy of gratitude. And I remember listening to that one on day 3, and tears ran out of my eyes, just thinking of, I thought of all the wonderful little things. I have a home, I have a husband, I have a little dog that drives me nuts sometimes, but he's my dog. And all my family, my friends, my job, all those things, and you think of them, and you think of those days when you went on, oh, these people are driving me crazy. Look what they said. And, we're planning a family thing for today for my sister who's leaving to go to Baltimore, so I've heard all the different attitudes. Oh, she's bringing who? All of these things are going on. And if you sit back and you get that energy of gratitude, who cares what they said? If they show up, enjoy their presence. If their gratitude doesn't come with them, tell them you love them. It shifts and it moves. And the next day is grace is replying, because now you've given thanks and you've gotten that attitude of gratitude, and so grace replies. And the fifth day is gratitude awakens your true self. We had a 12-step series and talking about your true self. What is your true self? Anybody? What is your true self? Or your true nature? Truth. We talk about our truth and our foundation. What is the first commandment then? Put God first. Okay? So that's your true self. You want to put God first because your true nature comes from the foundation of Christ's presence within you. So your true self, so awaken that true self, awaken from that foundation of that life that was gifted to you with grace and with ease through the presence and the energy of God. And then gratitude is in the present. It's not yesterday, and it's not coming. Mike says, I'm getting mine. But we already understood and affirmed that he has it right now. He might not have done the Mandela thing yesterday, but whenever he does it, it doesn't matter, because right now that gratitude is present. And today's is the obstacles to grace melt away. So we're talking about our attitude, and we're talking about shifting our attitude. And those obstacles to grace, those blocks that we call them in our lives, start to melt away when we're in that state of perfect attitude, gratitude, grace, appreciation, and all of those. And one of the questions in the journal was, choose a thing that you would like to see transformed in your life. Think on it. And then another thing is, list 3 things that add struggle to your daily life. You want to list them so that you know what they are, so that you can transform them and shift them. And then it says, write down ways of practicing gratefulness that can reduce any struggles. So we're going to go more into our attitude, which brings about that gratitude state of mind. So the first quote he used was, attitude is a little thing that makes a big difference, doesn't it? Just shifting your attitude, even when you're in a certain situation where everything's hyped and people are angry, and you go, ooh, let me shift this energy within myself, and you make a big difference. So you can be that lone person with that shining beacon of God light in the midst of chaos and turbulence. Because you went to your foundation and you put God first and you allowed that energy to emanate from you. And I said right there, and it says, attitude strongly affects everything you're experiencing, doesn't it? It affects everything in your experience. I said earlier he talked about quantum physics, and he says you have to understand quantum physics to understand attitude. And I said, that's a big deal, because I've read some things on quantum physics. But he simplified it, and he says what quantum physics is trying to say is, as you observe an object, anything, we change from our consciousness the makeup of that object. Do you agree with that? Yes. So that's where attitude comes about. I can look at that chair and say, oh, it's made out of metal, cloth, it's red, it's gold, it's very pretty, and I like it. And somebody can come, I don't like gold. Why you got gold chairs? That stayed the same, didn't it? But different perceptions and different attitudes about it. And it says, attitude is easier to observe in other people other than yourself. Isn't that true? Don't we go along and see somebody else, look at her, or look at him. And then there's a verse in the Bible that says, take the thorn out of your eye before you see the boulder in someone else's. Shift your attitude first when you look at somebody. So when you find yourself judging someone else, step back and shift your attitude and your consciousness. Are you seeing a glass half full or half empty? So when you see that person, are you seeing them as a child of God, co-creator of God, in the image and likeness of God? Or are you seeing their outer appearance? Or just what they said? And is what they said that big? Is it something you can shift in your consciousness? Or that bad? Negative attitudes bring about negative experience. If you see the world and look at the news and you see, oh, these bad things are going on, oh my God, look what's happening in this world, that's what you get. But if you see the news and you see all those things and you bless it and you send healing to it and you put a different perspective on and look for that nugget of goodness that's going on in it, the world is magical, bright, and beautiful. So what is your attitude to life? Think on that. What is your attitude on life? And if you don't know and you haven't really thought about it, he gave 2 examples of how to discover your attitude. He says, 1, look at your life, at the things in your life, good or bad, for they are proof of what kind of attitude you are projecting. Think about that. Your life is here. You have achieved successes or not successes. You've achieved material things or non-material things, whatever your focus could be at that moment. Whatever is up here, we know manifests in the outside. So if your life is flowing along, even with those bumps, that's called life. Those bumps, those stumbles, and those craters sometimes, that's called life. And if we know we are walking with God and with that understanding of that truth within us, that Christ's presence within us, our life is still beautiful. Everything that we achieve is still great, and we can say thank you for all of those different things. So that's a projection of your life. What does it look like? And if your mind is always seeing the negative, you go home, I don't have enough money, I don't have this in my house, I don't have this in my house. That's your attitude, and that's what's projecting on the outside. And another way to find out what your attitude is, ask your best friend. They're usually quite honest, aren't they? They will tell you if your attitude sucks or not. So if you're in that place where you can't quite understand where you are at any particular point, you find yourself a bit more negative than normal, sit down, take a breath, find where you are, and go back to your foundation. Go back to that truth, the truth principles that Unity teaches, and we'll do the 5 principles at the end. Understand who you are at that particular moment and make a shift. take away, release any stress or obstacles, and allow yourself to be transformed in those moments. The next one, he says, happiness is a choice, isn't it? I think so. It is something you decide on ahead of time. It's how you arrange your thoughts that counts. And I found this verse, Psalm 37:4, it says, take delight in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. Take delight in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. So, if you make the choice to be happy first thing in the morning, you've arranged your thoughts for a happy day. And if you make the other choice, you've arranged your thoughts in that way. And if we take delight in the Lord, that means our happiness is shine, we will get all the desires that we ask for. And it uses the story of a legally blind 88-year-old man. His wife had died, and they were moving into assisted care home. And there's a little story, I think it's going out on the internet and stuff like that. And each morning, he woke up with a smile on his face and was glad to see the day. So when they moved into this new home, the nurse told him to sit there and wait. She was taking him to his room. And he moved to his room and he says, "It's a wonderful room." And she's looking at him like, "You're blind. What do you think it's a wonderful room? How did he get a wonderful room?" And he says, each day is a gift. And that each day when you awaken, he focused on all those happy memories he had stored up throughout his life. And therefore that room was wonderful. Because he carried all those memories. And one of the parts it was talking about is that when you get older, we talk about wisdom of the ages. Of when we get older, we have a storehouse of memories. And we can choose which memories we want to carry on when we get to a stage where we're weakened and what age does as we move forward for many of us. You have a choice of how you arrange your thoughts each morning. Do you get up in the morning, my body aches and I can't do this? Or do you get up in the morning and it's just a great day? I might move a little bit slower than yesterday, my shoulder might hurt, but I'm not focusing on those. I'm focusing on a great day. So every morning he saw a beautiful room because the last thought he probably had was in his wonderful house with his wife. And so he continues to carry on that happiness. And happiness is that choice. The next one is, we don't see things as they are, we see things as we are. And that's why a quote by Annis Nin is an author from the early 1900s. We see things as they are. And when I was going through this, I thought about change. There's a lot of change going on now. There are a lot of things moving and shifting. Some you agree with, some we don't agree with. There's opening of gay marriages. To me, it's all about love, unity, is embrace that base because we talk about God as love. Every individual is a child of God. Who are we to say what marriage is? It was ordained by humans and we say it's all about love. And so that is a shift, and there are naysayers, and then there are people who are going with it. So we don't see things as they are. We're not seeing them as love as what God taught us. We're seeing them as from where we are. Oh no, I like it the way it was. And not honoring that change is the only thing that happens in life all the time. And we need to honor that. And we don't have to like a lot of things, but we can honor it and keep moving without anger, but with grace and gratitude. You are alive today, and those things will shift. And he talked about the story in this one, and I also wrote, what changes have you seen or heard about where you thought or spoke negatively? You know, think about that. And he talked about the guy, Max, talked about the story of the first steamboat. Before it was horse and carriage and this, that, and the other, or they had other boats that were rowed and stuff, and he took the story of the Clermont, the first steamboat. And all the pessimists who saw the boat go in the water for the first time looked out there and says, "It's never going to start, it's never going to start." And of course it started and it kept going. Now we have huge mega cruise ships, but that was the first steamboat way back in that day. And it says she started, and of course, guess what they said next? It's never gonna stop! It's never gonna stop! And we've all met people like that, right? Oh, we've had incidents in our lives where we can't get our mind to shift and allow things to be. And we have to sit with and allow ourselves. In Isaiah 42:20 says, he sees many things but does not observe them. His ears are open but he doesn't hear them. This is when you're stuck in a place and you don't allow change to take place and things to evolve. And one of the big things I always remember from Reverend Paulette Pipe, it says, what does it have to do with you? And if we can step back and say, well, I'm in the foundation of God, and my God is all about love, and that's going on, I don't particularly like it, but what does it have to do with me? I'm not on that boat. If at that point in my life I'm that afraid of it, I have a choice. I don't have to go on that boat. And at some point, you will get on that boat. And it also brings the story of the young lady at my job. Her dad lives with her. And she just put air conditioning in this house. I don't like air conditioning. I don't want air conditioning in the house. I never had air conditioning in my house. Well, she got air conditioning. What happened? He loves the air conditioning. It's nice and cool, isn't it? He's in his 80s. It's just like the people who said the thing about this steamboat. We don't see things as they are. We see things as we are right now. And we understand that we have a choice to shift and to change that. The next thing is attitude is everything in life. As I said before, some complain that roses have thorns, while others give thanks that thorns have roses. Exactly. I give thanks that thorns have roses. I have roses all in my house, my yard. I love them. Oh, it's a bit down low. It says Philippians 2:4, do all things without murmuring or arguing. Thorns have roses. And the quick story I'll tell you about this one, I thought it was great. Here's people in sales, a shoe manufacturing company. They want to broaden their business, and so they sent a seasoned, really good salesman off to Africa to set up a new business and get it moving. Now think about this, thorns and roses. Set up this new market out there. He didn't hear from him 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks. They're all worried. What happened to him? And he comes home, and the first thing he says, this situation in Africa is hopeless. No one wears shoes. Oh my goodness, I remember going to Ethiopia. My brother was at that point, never wore shoes either, but everybody else wore shoes. But he says he couldn't go out there because nobody wears shoes. How am I supposed to sell shoes out there if they don't wear shoes? So this company decided, well, we'll wait a while. Now sent a new salesman. He was relatively new with the company. And said, let's try again. You go out to Africa and see if you could set it up. Week 1, 2, and 3 go by. Oh boy, what happened? Has it happened again? The beginning of week 4, he sends a cablegram. Having the time of my life. Over 1,000 orders have been sent to you. This place is incredible. The opportunities are limitless. You see, no one wears shoes here. Look at it that way. No one. He saw the opportunity. He saw that, roses have thorns, while others give thanks that thorns have roses. He saw the thorns have roses. He saw the limitlessness of it. He didn't worry about the prick of the thorn. He saw the limitless, whereas the guy had been doing it all this time, didn't know how to transform. And all he saw was, they didn't have shoes. How are you going to sell shoes to him? Shift in attitude. Do all things without murmuring and arguing. And the next one is, we have the choice to either make ourselves miserable and weak or happy and strong. What is so interesting is that it takes the same amount of energy to achieve either, doesn't it? We talked about this in class on Wednesday, and we talked about, boy, it must be a lot of work being angry all the time, or having a bad attitude. And people going around, I was out with my girlfriend, and she talked about one lady who reported her. She was in English, and they found at immigration that she reports everybody. who's not from Bermuda. And what the first thing out of her mouth is, I go to church every Sunday and I'm a Christian. And I'm not putting it down or anything like that. But she didn't quite kind of take it out the door and hold on to those truth that God is love and not judge and have a bad attitude. She was never happy about anything. And so she saw bad in everything. It takes the same amount of energy to be happy. And she had a choice to be happy and take the teachings that she learned from whatever church she was going for and let it be a part of her life. But they were two separate entities.
Mhm.
And they were just words.
I would suggest that to be miserable, you lose energy.
Yes,
to
it
be
does.
happy, you gain energy.
Exactly.
But
And
it's
that's
the
very
same
true.
amount. You
But
lose
if you
lot
put
of
it on a
energy.
level playing field, I would say it's
Yeah.
a lot easier, as you said, to be happy than it
Yeah.
is to be miserable.
Yeah, yeah.
It's gotta be a lot of work.
Yes, work.
It's work waking up every morning, it's gonna figure out how angry can I be. And let's take that step to greatness. And we talked about one of the chapters in this Discover the Power Within, which is the book we're using for our classes, from miserable sinners to masters. And I thought that was a great chapter talking about the choices that we have. Because the central theme of Christianity way back then was you were born a sinner. Jesus didn't teach that. God didn't teach that. You aren't born a sinner. You are a child of God, the image and likeness of God. But the old doctrine taught people so they have to achieve greatness. However you're born, Jesus says, ye are gods. So therefore we're born masters. Therefore we're born inherently good. Therefore we are born of and in love. So our choice is always going to be happy and strong. And then it's definitely work to go the other way, because ye are gods. And Proverbs 8:10 says, take my instruction instead of silver, and knowledge rather than the choice of gold. So go within yourself for the instructions and the knowledge of God, and don't worry about the gold and the silver, which are materialistic on the outside. And I like this one. I like the story that goes with it. If you're in a hole, stop digging. Right? Now, there are some people who keep digging themselves in a hole. You keep saying, you're sitting on the side going, stop talking. Don't say anything else. You're going too far in. And you listen to them go, ooh. And they're digging that hole deeper and deeper and deeper for themselves. I won't go there right now. and the Psalm 7, 14 to 16, I'll read it for you, and I found tied into it, says, see how they conceive evil and are pregnant with mischief and bring forth lies. They make a pit, digging it out, and fall into the hole that they have made. Their mischief returns upon their heads, and on their heads their violence descends. So, if you're in a hole, stop digging. And the cute story he talks about was two guys on a high rise every day, so they can't get down, and they're working there together. And every day they open the lunchbox at lunchtime, and one guy says, oh man, a cheese sandwich again? Why am I got a cheese sandwich? And this guy's sitting there because it's the only person he can have lunch with, because they're way up on this high rise. And finally he got fed up with him, and he says, well, who makes your lunch? Well, guess what he says? I do. I do. If you're digging a hole, stop digging. Change the sandwich. But he couldn't get past the blocks. He's stuck. He got cheese sandwiches, I'm guessing, every day when he was growing up. And that's all he knew what to make. Or he had time to make, so he complained every day. But he forgot he had a choice. So he was falling on his head, and all the misery was going with it, and he was piling the sand on top of the sand every day with his cheese sandwich. The simplest thing was that cheese sandwich. Oh my goodness. So we're getting towards the end here. It says, people are affected not by things, but by the views they take of those things. And it gets us back to the first one that we talked about with attitude. It's how you see it, which is what the book. It's not what you see, it's how you see it. And I found this, and 2 Corinthians 5:16 says, "From now on, therefore, we regard no one from a human point of view. Even though we once knew Christ from a human point of view, we know him no longer in that way." It's talked about shifting and learning the teachings of Jesus. Jesus came to earth, as they said, and taught us a new way of life, allowed us and opened us up to claim our divinity, to know our truth, to understand that we are co-creators with God, and that we have a choice on what we see and how we see it. And we can move through life by that choice, so that whatever comes up in front of us, we can shift it, and we can be affected by it negatively or positively. And he talked about it with this one, and if we're walking the path of Jesus, we're going to see things as great and magnificent each step of the way. Whether we stubbed our toe or not, it's just a movement forward, because we know sometimes we walk that way and we trip. Maybe we were supposed to go that way. Maybe we weren't following a path that we were meant to lead. Maybe we were supposed to go that way. And we have to find that out for ourselves. And in this one, he gave the story about, and he said, it's talking about criminal trials. And he says the most reliable testimony is from the eyewitness. Think about that. Because, he says, if 3 people see the same instance, there are 3 different points of views. Everybody saw it differently. And so the task of the prosecutor and all that is to find out what is the truth in that, what they saw. Is it what they saw, baggage they were carrying from a long time ago, and they perceived it on there? And the sad thing of what reminded me, and I was looking on Facebook this morning, and they were taking down the Confederate flags in the South, and there was a young man on the side who saw the black people who were parading, and he was doing a guerrilla dance, because he says that's what you are. And so his perception, now this is a young man, he wasn't even there in the slavery days and the Confederate days, is what is in his mind and what he's taught that brought him to that point where he's still doing this guerrilla dance. And you sit there and you go, wow, we're still getting that. People are affected not by things but the views they take of these things. His attachment to that Confederate flag and all the teachings that he's been brought up with has created a block in his life where he can transform and see it differently and see this world as a more open and loving place. Jesus walked that path for us to take a new path, for us to see the love in each person, for us to be co-creators and create great things. It is how you see it, not what you see, that counts. And just before the last one, and it's just one person with a strong attitude is better than 100 with only a minor interest. And this stone one's from Maxwell Stone, and Ecclesiastes 8 says, "Who is that wise man, and who knows the interpretation of a thing? Wisdom makes one face shine, and the hardness of one's consonants to be changed." And we're talking about shift and change and attitude and how we see things and how we view them and what baggage are we attaching to things. And I had to share this last little story that is attached to that. It's about a polio victim named Carl Sudacum. And this is the story he attached to this one. It's a quick story. And Max remembers the guy who tells the story. It says, Max cleared his throat before speaking. One of his most phenomenal stories on attitudes I've ever heard was about a polio victim named Carl Sudacum. Although he is completely paralyzed in his body just below his Adam apple, he eventually did the impossible by leaving his iron lung and learning to breathe like a frog. This is a true story. I took my eyes, they're in a car driving home, coming from a homeless shelter where they are volunteering. He says, I took my eyes off the road for a second, turned to Max and said, you gotta be kidding me. He says, nope. He says, while a lieutenant in the Navy in 1953, he contracted polio. For 6 long years, the only way he could breathe was through this iron lung on a tilt bed. His life seemed helpless until one day he got really angry and decided he would find another way to breathe outside of that metal prison, because way back then that's what they had. Searching his memories, he suddenly remembered how he used to breathe like a frog as a young boy. And you know how, there's that heavy sound. You probably remember the trick, because we've all heard, well, we got those little noisy ones in Bermuda. Max says, it's where you take in a gulp of air and then force it down your windpipe. And he says, of course. And when he exhaled, his lungs let out the air like a deflating balloon. Max laughed. He's been breathing that way ever since, and science doesn't know how he's done it. He grinned in sheer appreciation. The guy said it's like whistling through your teeth. Some people can't do it and some can. His next decision was to become an attorney. This is the guy who's breathing like a frog. So he entered the University of San Diego, where his wife drove him to school and wheeled him into class. He couldn't take notes and a tape recorder was too cumbersome. His solution? He learned to listen and remember very well. Talk about attitude, right? Max continued. Other problems entered his amazing man's life, like developing diabetes and an ulcer, but he eventually got his diploma and passed California's bar exam. Now, how many of us would do that? All I could do was shake my head in wonderment. He began practicing law and signed his name K.D. Sudocum by writing with a pen in his teeth. When he talked too long in court, his face became red, though he learned to handle it. But the big problem involved getting a cold, something that could easily prove fatal. So what did he do? Sudocum boldly stated, I don't get colds. He claimed it. If he falls asleep or faints outside the iron lungs doing his frog breathing, he would die. What does he do about that? He says, I try to think about it as little as possible. Gee, Max, I said, now this is a guy with an attitude I wish I had. Oh, you can, Arnie, he says. You most certainly can. Now that is an attitude that founded, I would say, in a Christ consciousness that's very, very powerful. We have polio. We can't move from the neck down, but yet we become a lawyer. And we learn to breathe without the only apparatus that they had back then. And he got his bar degree, but his mind said, I'm never going to get a cold. His mind said, I can do this. His mind says, even when it looks like I might pass out, I can shift my mindset and keep breathing, even though it may sound like a frog to you. We have that choice to shift our attitude. So if just one person with that strong attitude becomes your mentor or your guiding force, like the Christ presence within you, hold on to that, because it's better than 100 other people rambling on about nothing. Hold on to that thought and that energy of that one powerful attitude that can shift, like the Christ consciousness of Jesus, that path that he walked. And as we close, we say again, attitude is how you see it, not what you see, that counts. Attitude strongly affects everything in your life. And as we said, we read about attitude and the Sermon on the Mount. And one section of what we read this week in class was Matthew 6:22-23. And talking about the eye, it says the eye is a lamp of the body. So it is if your eye is healthy, your whole body will be full of light. And if your eye is unhealthy, your whole body will be filled with darkness. If then the light in you is darkness, how great is your darkness? And we talked about that a bit in class, because the first part sounds a little straightforward, and then the last section says, if the light in you is darkness, how great is your darkness? And we're talking about attitude. And think of this young man, Carl. Most of us will say he's in that deep gaga and darkness in life. How is he ever going to have a life from that state? He chose to see light in his life. So how great are those thoughts in your mind that shift you further and further back into the darkness that you can't see the light? So let your light shine. Whatever you see, it is how you see, not what you see, that counts. Allow that inner light within you that comes through your eyes to see only good. Let your attitude be of greatness, of love, and of joy. and honor that spirit that is yours, that is your birthright. Because it affects every experience in your life. And we're going to take those